Somewhere among snow-covered peaks, a 13-year-old girl looked out the window of her mansion. Down below, a man with animal ears was being dragged by a soldier. Grumbling, her brother questioned what their father could possibly be thinking. On that winter day, when the snow fell more heavily, it was when the girl saw Desi for the first time. The young man looked so mistreated that it was hard to tell whether he was a man or a beast. His thin body was covered in scars, and he wore clothes that were nothing more than filthy rags stuck to his skin. But among those dull strands of hair that covered his face, there was the yellow gleam of his eyes. The girl is surprised by the sight. A man advised her not to go near that thing, saying she might even catch something disgusting. Meanwhile, the guard pulled the chains, ordering the prisoner to move. Upset, the man looked at her, and gripping her arm tightly, he asked whether she had heard what he said. By reflex, she answered yes. He said it was good that she was an obedient girl, calling her Celiana and telling her to go inside, but she could only focus on the pain in her arm. With a sad expression, the young girl agreed. That day, her father had given a name to the chained young man, naming him Desi, which meant something like trash, scraps, nothing more than leftovers. Looking at his footprints, the girl thought that name did not suit him at all. The Alvard family was simple, made up of her father and mother, together with her two older brothers, her sister, and herself. Her father was the 13th head of the family. Everyone called him the Count. He always meddled in everything, inspecting the farmland for lazy villagers, even criticizing the servants' work if a single speck of dust was seen on the property. Not even his own family escaped his shouting, as he was always watching and interfering in their affairs. But no matter how irritating that man was, the protagonist had to obey him. During one of his lectures, her brothers replied with disinterest that they understood, while she stayed silent with her head lowered. Her father looked down at her. If she did not obey, he would become irritated, and whenever that happened, the man would shout or grab her arm, which always hurt her. In response to their father, her brothers carried themselves differently. Her second brother, because of his stutter, was hiding somewhere on the property, deprived of any chance to answer. Her father seemed to want him to be forgotten. As for her older brother, he always received most of the scolding, probably because he was the next head of the house. The young man could even answer well enough to please him. However, he always complained in the old man's absence. Whenever that happened, the boy would leave the property and wander through the village on horseback. Celiana wondered whether that made him feel better, but she had no way of knowing. After all, she had never set foot outside that house. Her mother neglected the rest of the family. Always quiet and calm, almost sickeningly well-behaved, always a proper lady. Celiana used to think a lot about her mother. When she was 17 years old, she married a man of 28. She had a bright and exuberant personality, but they told her that brightness faded with time. After losing 2 children before having her, perhaps the woman thought the protagonist was to blame for those miscarriages. Lying in bed, her mother asked for that child to be taken away immediately after the birth, which the maids obeyed. The girl still a baby in their arms. That woman had refused to even properly look at her. Even her illnesses began after the girl was born. Her mother was sitting near the window when the girl appeared at the door, calling for her. The woman answered automatically, pointing out that she had not even noticed she was there. But in the girl's mind, she knew that just as her father wanted to forget her second brother, she assumed it was natural that her mother also wanted to forget her. But there was always one person that woman missed every single day: her sister Sylvia. Like her mother, the girl had a gentle expression and brown hair. Even her smile must have been exactly like her mother's in her youth. Celiana wondered if that was why she loved her so much. Even when the young woman was scolded for trying to go riding like her brother, or while she cried day and night wishing for death because she could not be taught like the boys, her mother was there, breaking her usual silence to support her. The protagonist did not know how, but she had even managed to convince her father, playing a huge role in allowing Sylvia to go to the academy. Since her sister was the only one in the family who truly saw her, she was also important to her. On the day she left for the academy, Sylvia told her that place was very quiet and small, and that when she came back from the academy, she would do everything she could to take her to the capital with her, asking her to stay good until then and saying goodbye. With that, it had been practically a year since the young woman left the estate. In other words, it had been a year since her mother had been sad, missing her. That was strange, watching the window like that. She was the only one who made an effort for Sylvia to go to the academy. Even so, there was her mother, focusing on her absence with each passing day. Suddenly, someone asks what she was doing there. The protagonist then tells Ellie, the maid, that her doll's head had come off. In a hurry, Ellie wonders if the young girl still had a doll, but says she will take a look later. And while another maid scolded her, telling her not to get distracted, then she says not now, but maybe at nightfall. asking Celiana to stay quiet in her room until then. So she stands still, motionless in the hallway. Her father disapproved of her playing with anyone. However, the children of the great families never traveled that far to play with her. That doll was the only thing she could talk to at any moment, but it never answered back. Her sister, who had stayed by her side as a friend, left for her own future. So Celie stayed there, like a child her mother and brothers found bothersome, a child her own father did not consider important. That was who she was. Celiana, the child no one cared about. All they taught her was to be obedient. So she spent her days, calm and silent, until she felt a huge desire to talk to someone. Anyone would do. She just needed to talk. And right at that moment, another child in that place also had no attention at all. Just like her, opening the door and going down the stairs, the girl feels the cold atmosphere of the place. Seeing the young man from before in chains, she calls his name, receiving only a growl in return. While she looked at him and timidly tried to form a sentence, Desi tries to lunge at the bars, frightening Celiana. The protagonist then runs through the hallways, breathless and afraid. Later that night, lying in her bed, the girl dreamed of something, a memory from when she was younger, feeding a little bird at the window. When it takes flight, the girl only asks it to come back again. The whistle of an arrow cuts through the air. Celiana watches without even being able to react, her father holding the poor bird as if it were a prize, his servants applauding the scene. The count even jokes, saying he was tired of only catching small prey, claiming that from now on he should go after something bigger. The protagonist wakes up startled. She realizes it was all just a dream, wondering if it was because of the encounter with Desi. The girl remembers the chain around his neck, the saliva dripping. She thinks the young man did not receive her well. After all, he jumped against the bars even while shackled. Even with the chains digging into his wounds, his whole body was bruised and red. Even his breathing was strange. She remembers the sounds she heard while fleeing, and thoughtfully she realizes it sounded like the rumble of an empty stomach. Then realizing that Desi was hurt and hungry, staying in such a cold place, he would only die over time. Just like that bird, Celiana did not want that. Getting out of bed, the young girl walks through the estate, going down the same stairs as before. She finally finds Desi again. Surprised to see him collapsed, the girl asks if he is perhaps dead. A while later, he lets out a growl in return. Excited, Celiana thanks him for being alive. She asks if the young man is hungry, taking a loaf of bread from her basket. The protagonist says cheerfully that she brought it for him. Noticing the distance, Celiana wonders if she should just throw the bread at him, but she thinks that if she hurt him, he might end up hating her. When considering whether she should roll the bread, she comes to the conclusion that it would only dirty the food, and even if she just left the food there, Desi would not be able to reach it. A bolder idea passes through her mind, but looking at the lock, she sees she does not have the keys. Gathering courage, she makes her decision, telling Desi that he could not bite her, and bashfully squeezes through the steel bars, commenting that her father always said girls should be small and thin, and since she was skinny even by his standards, she could pass through easily. Fat phobia in the Middle Ages? That is rough. But anyway, she could get through that. Desi watched in silence, while the girl struggled to get through, even her dress getting caught. Adjusting her head, she was finally there. Happily, the girl thinks that her body was finally useful for something. Once she gets there, Celiana fumbles over her words, but says that she stole this for him, so he should not attack her, and so she holds out the bread. Desi hesitates for a moment, but hunger is greater, so he approaches and starts eating. The girl watches, enchanted. At last, Desi gives a kiss to her hand. The protagonist watched, confused, but in just 3 bites, the bread basically disappeared. Who would have thought that someone in captivity would be hungry, right? Asking if he was still hungry, the protagonist says she did not have any more. Calling him, she asks if the young man knew that he was called Desi. She introduces herself as Celiana Alvard, saying he could call her Celi. His ears twitch, processing everything. The girl points out that although he did not speak, he at least seemed to understand her. At last, warning that she would steal more, and that coming here should be a secret only between the two of them, and he should not tell anyone. Not that he was very talkative. So, on the next day, and on the days that followed, she went down into that dark basement. Being the quiet child she was, no one even noticed it. Desi was always hungry. He did not even growl anymore. The young man was not even fierce if he was fed properly. So the question of why he had to live down there crosses her mind. While combing her hair, a woman says it was because he was a beast. The maid explains that to make a beast submit, you had to drain its strength. Thus, feeding him little would make him resist less. Uneasy, Celiana questions whether he did not seem like a person after all, since he He also walked on two legs, pointing out that he had two eyes, and despite his sharp fangs, his mouth was also normal. His ears were strange, but there were two of them, just like humans. Confused, the maid asks how she knew those details. Nervously, the girl states that she had only taken a good look at him before. The woman then explains that she should not feel sorry for him, saying that, as someone so naive and innocent, the young girl tended to worry about unnecessary things. Because even though he looked like a person, Desi was not human, so she did not need to feel that way for him. They said that a rare beast called Osk walked on 2 feet like humans, but had the form of a dog. The count stated that he intended to use him as a hunting dog, asking the girl not to pay any more attention to that, because her father could become furious if he found out. Celiana thinks that if just that would irritate him, she had already done too much. After all, she had spoken with Desi, gotten close to him, and had even fed him. For more than 1 day, in fact. The time with him was starting to outweigh her fear of her father. The young girl savored the taste of the small victory that those secret meetings were. But it did not take long for that day to arrive. Another day, excited, the girl asks what she should bring him next time, asking if there was anything he would like to eat. The protagonist says that soup was not a good idea. After all, it would end up spilling while she was bringing it, and would dirty the whole place. Meat was obviously out of the question, since if the meat were undercooked, its blood could stain the doll or the basket. That comment bothered Desi a little, and he ends up throwing himself onto the floor. A little confused, Celiana explains that stealing meat would be an extremely difficult task. She would also like to eat it, so she could only bring about the size of half her palm, and asks whether he was listening by any chance. Placing her hand in front of him to call his attention, Celiana says that her palm was small, so she could only eat about that much. Sighing, the protagonist says that it is unfair. After all, her father and her brother eat a piece of meat the size of her face. She had held that in for about 100 times, but on the 100th time she could not. So she told her brother that she would like to eat a big piece of meat too. In the end, he said that he ate a lot because he was strong, and she ate little because she was weak. Anyway, the young girl explains that bringing meat was really a complicated task at the moment. Seeing the prisoner move, the girl asks why he was scratching his ear on the floor. Annoyed, Celiana realizes that he was not even listening, calling him and asking him to come closer because she would say it again. She pulls him by the ear, saying that now she got him, and little by little begins to whisper in his ear, the sound of his despair echoing through the castle. But that day finally came. Celiana thinks that she would not like to go into the details. She watched through the window, seeing Desi being dragged by some soldiers, being forced to kneel in front of her father. The young man growled, his teeth showing. Irritated, the count raised his whip. The protagonist could only look away. Panting, Celiana crouches down, only hearing the distant shouts of her father, who complained about Desi's defiant look. With each new shout, the sound of the whip echoed, the girl covering her ears. He states that that creature did not even know its place. Handing the whip to a servant, the count says that he was only wasting his strength, and that they should send the beast back and finally prepare the meal. The guard agrees, ordering them to raise him. While the count walked away, Desi remained fallen, blood running from his wounds. The protagonist then thinks that even the meals followed her father's rules. He himself sat at the head of the table, followed on the left by her mother, her brother at his right side. Her sister sat near her mother, but her seat had been empty for the past years. As for her second brother, he had been forbidden to sit at that table for a long time, so his place was currently beside her older brother. As they began the meal, she thinks that she was no different from a decorative candlestick. Her father sighed. While eating, the girl thinks that while she existed there only as a doll, no matter how she ate, no one cared. And even if she pretended to eat, with a face as if she had zero appetite, nothing changed. Until her brother asks what she was doing, startling her. Nervously, the girl explains that she was just eating. He then says that he was not referring to that, but asking why she was sitting there like an idiot, even holding the utensils the wrong way. Silent, she only wants her brother to go away soon, so that she can steal his food too. Irritated, the young man leaves, complaining that there was not a single normal person in the house. While gathering the leftovers, Celiana thinks that she misses her sister, remembering when, after the death of the little bird, she had comforted her, hugging her. Her sister said that it hurt because she was young and had a kind heart. As a child, she questioned whether other people did not feel that. Her sister only states that maybe they could not, that when the body grew, the heart hardened like steel, shielding itself, no longer being able to feel the pain of others. And so they forgot things like compassion, joy, and even the warmth of being together at night. Only sharp things remained, greed and anger. Back at the cell, seeing Desi lying on the floor, Celiana questions what she should do, thinking that she is probably still very far from being an adult. Stretching out her arms, the girl throws herself toward Desi, begging him not to die. Sobbing, the girl asks for forgiveness. With tears falling, she asks that the young man no longer feel pain and not die. Rummaging through her bag, the girl warns that this time she also brought meat. Placing the food before him, she asks him to try to eat something. A little worried, the girl wonders what she should do about the wound spread across his body. With tears in her eyes, she begins pulling at parts of her own clothes. She tries to tear them with her teeth to improvise some bandages. That way he definitely would not die. Suddenly, however, a voice interrupts her, asking her to stop crying. The girl is confused, looking directly at him. Desi calmly says that everything is fine, explaining that if he appeared with bandages or anything else suspicious, people would begin to suspect, also stating that he would not die from something so trivial, so she should stop crying now. Without understanding, the girl stared at his face. Suddenly, Celiana screams, questioning whether he really can speak. The young man replies that yes, he can. Then the protagonist asks why he had stayed silent all that time. Without answering anything she said, a little embarrassed, he explains that her father had thrown him there. During all that time, he had been treated like an object, no longer wanting to be used as some kind of spectacle. But after so much time, he realized that the girl in front of him was different from the other people. Desi looks directly at the protagonist. There are still some tears in his eyes. A little sadly, Celiana replies that he could at least have told her the truth. Right afterward, she throws herself into his arms and hugs him. Through tears, she confesses that she felt very lonely all this time. The boy is surprised. Desi only repeats that she should have already stopped crying because she was getting her whole face dirty. She continues hugging the young man while grumbling. She ends up calling him dirty too. Not knowing what else to do, the boy simply gives up and throws himself onto the floor, while the protagonist stays on top of him, crying and trembling like an abandoned puppy. He thinks that he no longer understands anything that is happening. The protagonist then asks again if he is really okay, asking if he is not going to end up dying. Desi replies that he is completely fine. Even so, she insists. The girl did not want him to feel pain or suffer again. Then she explains something important. Her father hated it when someone looked directly into his eyes. So even if he had done something wrong, it was enough to agree and lower his gaze. That way the Count would probably not try to kill him again. Since the Count believed that Desi could not speak, it was enough for him to remain silent and keep his eyes lowered. That way the Count would think he was obedient and would not attack him again. Celiana then asks if he could do that for her. Desi remains silent for a few seconds, asking if that advice came from her own experience. A little sadly, she replies that it did. Winter finally ended. The cutting wind that once felt like a knife began to ease. A warmer breeze from the west began to blow. After the young man stopped resisting, her father seemed to have become a little more tolerant. Meanwhile, Celiana had finally turned 14 years old. Her sister always said she would show her the capital when she reached that age. Still sleepy, the girl thinks that she is still tired. But instead of an invitation, all she receives from her sister is an apology, explaining that she would be too busy attending her classes. A maid asks if the girl had been eating properly, claiming that she had lost a little weight and seemed to have little energy. The young woman only agrees. Having felt a little disappointed by all of that, but deciding to try to act maturely, her sister at least sent a gift, a telescope. She spends some time observing the horizon. When she looks directly at the sun for too long, she begins to feel dizzy. Then she turns the telescope toward the villages where the peasants live, wondering how so many people manage to live in such small and cramped houses. Suddenly, something catches her attention. A soldier seems nervous. He orders the chains to be tightened. While they try to restrain someone, the servants wonder how that boy still has so much strength. After all, he is barely eating. Even so, they ask for the chains to be tightened even more. The protagonist is startled by that scene. She does not understand why that is happening. Desi had behaved well all this time, so she did not understand why they were tormenting him again. Without thinking much, she starts hurrying down the stairs. That should not be happening. When she gets near the door, the girl hesitates for a second. She had never crossed that door alone before, becoming confused about what to do. The protagonist did not intend to leave the mansion grounds, so she believed everything would be fine. Even so, fear still ran through her. After all, whenever she was scolded, it hurt. But at that moment, the one feeling pain was Desi. Gathering courage, she finally opens the door. Outside, the shouting continues. Some men call the boy a little beast. Others tell them to hold him properly. Celiana then places herself in front of everyone, asking what they are doing and ordering them to stop. The scene before her is strange. Several servants are struggling to bathe the naked boy, frightened like a cat. It was like watching someone trying to bathe a golden retriever. One of them asks what the young lady is doing there, explaining that they were only trying to wash that fellow. The girl replies that she came because the noise was too loud, explaining that Desi was in pain because they were scrubbing him with a very rough brush, suggesting that maybe he would calm down more if they washed him with a soft cloth and warm water, also pointing out that they should remove that strange muzzle. The guard replies that she has no idea how dangerous that boy could be. While he says that, Desi remains completely still in the bathtub. He seems almost catatonic. There is a guard lying beside it, probably the victim of some kick during Desi's panic. When the servants look at him again, they realize that he was crouching in the water, his face completely red with embarrassment. One of the servants warns that the young lady should not be there. As she moves away, Seliana orders them to use hot water and be more careful. She says she is leaving, but if they make noise again, she will personally come back. The workers quickly agree. One of the maids asks the young lady to leave quickly before the count finds out that she left her room. The protagonist covers her face with her hands. She was excited. It was the first time she had gone out alone and raised her voice in front of so many people. The first time she demanded something so firmly, but something does not seem right. She begins to feel dizzy. Suddenly her world starts to spin, and she falls to the ground, only hearing the screams around her. Later, she wakes up calling Desi's name, asking what he thought of the shout she gave. Surprised to realize that she managed to speak so loudly, she even laughs a little about it. The protagonist comments that he was amazing too. After all, it took 5 grown men to hold him down, thinking that was very impressive. When she sees him lying on the floor, the girl calls him again, asking if everything is all right. Her brother suddenly appears, calling her an idiot, saying that he had warned her before. That boy is far too strong and needs to eat more. He asks what would happen if the young man were given only a piece of meat the size of her palm. The way things were, the boy would starve to death anyway. While speaking, he kicks the boy lying on the floor. Then he orders him to say something. Lying there, Desi replies with only one thing. He says that he is hungry. The girl finally wakes from her feverish dream. The first thing she says is that she is hungry too. A maid beside the bed is surprised to see that she woke up. She says that Seliana suddenly fainted and frightened everyone. The young woman then repeats that she is very hungry. Nervously, the maid asks her to stay awake and that she would soon bring a meal to her bed. But the girl looks at the plate with a disgusted expression, sincerely asking if that was all and where the meat was. The maid explains that the count said it would be a waste of firewood to light the fireplace after it had already been put out, so meat was not an option at the moment. Besides, the count believes that nobles prefer slender and delicate women. Therefore, her portions should not increase. The girl feels her world crumble a little. Then the maid speaks in a low voice. If Seliana would not mind eating what the servants eat, maybe she could bring something hidden, since she was used to setting aside a little for her family. The girl immediately perks up. But Ellie sets one condition. She must never tell anyone that she received that food. Then she discreetly places something on the tray. Seliana watches without understanding what it is. The maid explains that they were only a few steamed potatoes. She does not know whether that would please a young noble lady. Picking up a basket of clothes, the woman says goodbye, saying that she hopes the girl's health improves, and that early in the morning she will return to collect the plate. That way, Seliana could leave it by the door when she finished. Alone again, the girl starts eating. Even a little cold, those potatoes seem delicious. She wonders if that is only happening because she is very hungry. Remembering the dream she had, she feels a slight shiver. Since she could not take the soup to the basement, she ended up devouring everything. It was the coldest soup she had ever eaten, even trying to save a piece of potato and not devour them all. Her hunger was far too great, so she could not resist completely, taking a few small bites. Later that night, she starts going down the stairs. The hallway was dark because there were no candles lit. The girl walked barefoot so as not to make any noise. As she went down, she wondered again why she had been so hungry that day. Once again, the dizziness appears, sweat beginning to run down her face. She thinks that maybe she should have eaten a little more, but then she remembers Desi, who is still trapped in the basement. All of this sacrifice was for him. So the protagonist continues down the corridors, humming his name, wondering whether she had left him waiting for too long. When she gets there, she apologizes, but then is startled by what she sees through the bars, in disbelief, asking who exactly he was. A young man then grabs her by the wrist, and she becomes desperate, a tear almost slipping from her eye. The girl asks him to let her go, saying that she needs to find Desi, and nervously starts describing him, saying that his hair was dark and covered in dust. She adds that he had a bad personality and growled at everything, but even so, he was her friend. The young man in front of her then calls her by name, claiming that it was him, that he was Desi, his face now illuminated, making it noticeable to her. Seliana is a little incredulous, wondering if that was really true, but the young man confirms it, and, a little irritated, asks what she meant by saying he had a bad personality. Falling to her knees, a little relieved, Seliana says, almost trembling, that she did not think it was him, and that she had not recognized him, now that he was a little more groomed and clean, although it really was a little dark there. The young man explains that because he had stayed quiet, just as she asked, they washed him and even gave him some more suitable clothes. Then the guards only tied his feet this time and left. The girl points out that that was a relief. Now that explained why she had almost had a heart attack when she saw him in front of her. Lowering himself to her level, Desi wonders if she is alright, saying that something had happened right after she left earlier, but he apparently could not see. The girl says that it is nothing serious and that she only got dizzy and fainted for a moment. Nervous, the young man asks what that was, since that did not seem like nothing. Shifting the subject, she says that what mattered most was here, since he must have been hungry all this time. Holding out the tray with bread and potatoes to him, Desi stands still, staring at her for a moment. The girl keeps talking, saying that since she missed today's meal, there would be no meat, but he should not be too disappointed, since she would try to bring a little more tomorrow. The young man then calls her, and moving closer to the bars, asks her to get the keys for him. The young man points out that he did not know where the key was. Desi then explains that it was with a gray-haired man, with a pointed nose and slightly bulging eyes. He had the key, a bunch of them in fact, adding that he also smelled like horses. The girl thinks that if he smelled like horses, he was probably talking about someone named Hawk. Desi agrees, saying that he had heard people call him that, and that he seemed to be quite careless, also explaining that only because they always came together had he not taken the key yet. Nervous, the girl asks why he suddenly needed the key. Desi explains that the girl fainted because of him, because she shared her food with him. That did not seem right to him, and right now, she herself looked like she was about to faint at any moment, so the protagonist should simply bring the key and he could deal with the rest on his own. The girl's mind turns into a mess, wondering how he would deal with that. If Desi left, there would be no reason at all for him to come back to that place, wondering if he was planning to leave her behind. She wanted to ask, but she was afraid of knowing the answer, afraid of being alone again. Seliana explains to Desi that she cannot do that and that she is very sorry. A little disappointed, he says that it is all right, that he understands, but points out that he cannot eat anymore. Pushing the tray back to her, she is shocked, asking why, saying that he could starve to death if he did not eat that, and that this was serious. Desi then asks what would happen to her. After all, Seliana was going through the same thing, eating less with each passing day. The girl is surprised. Then Desi says that she should not worry about him anymore, since that way he would worry about her too. The young man did not want her to help him if it meant that she would faint again. A few days pass. Lying in her bed, the protagonist wonders what she should do. She thought that everything would be fine as long as Desi was not mistreated anymore, but that did not happen in reality. Since that day, every time she went there, the young man refused her food. A bowl of strange stew covered with flies was all they gave him, and even when she brought a meal with very tasty meat, the young man only turned his head to the side. Seliana kept saying that it was all right, but the answer never changed. The young man grew weaker with each passing day, and she no longer knew what to do, until at one moment she touched his ear again, stroking him like a cat. But his expression remained sad. She felt that she was going to go crazy from so much anxiety. The protagonist simply no longer knew what to do. It would probably be better to let him go away. And since the one responsible for the keys, Hawk, was so careless, taking them would be easier than she thought, since the man was always dozing off around there. However, if that happened, she did not know how things would unfold. The next day, she went to the stable, the man sleeping once again in the middle of a pile of hay near the horses, the key hanging at his side. Stretching out her hand, the girl tries to reach it, but then suddenly someone strikes him on the head with a club. Hawk wakes up in fright. It turns out another worker was complaining about him falling asleep on the job again, and that because of this, he would teach him a lesson today. The young man apologized while being beaten. Hidden in the corner, and a little apprehensive, Seliana held the key in her hands. She had only been trying to carefully leave with the key while he was asleep. But what should she do now, since, well, her whole plan had gone down the drain? Wondering whether she should just run away. From the corner of her eye, she notices something. There was a space she could slip through. While the other worker was telling the young man to move, he noticed the movement. Sneaking through the corner, he saw the girl crawling, then asking what she was doing there. Awkwardly, the protagonist only says that she had dropped her doll and was looking for it. The man grew curious, wondering how that had happened. After all, they were in the middle of the stables. Pointing to a window, Celiana explains that she had been playing up there and accidentally dropped it. Hurrying, she says it would be better for her to go now, and that the man should keep an eye on Hawk. A little awkwardly, the worker warns that he had said many times that she should not run around there. Hawk then becomes a little worried, since apparently he might have lost the keys. That would make his situation much worse. So he decided that he should just stay quiet for a while. Leaving there, extremely apprehensive, the girl finally had the key in her hands. Remembering that people who stole from distracted others used to be called pickpockets. If her father found out about this, she would be in extremely big trouble. And besides that, she wondered how much it would hurt when Desi decided to leave her, running while clutching the keys. In her mind, her thoughts were flooded with heat and anxiety. After all, Desi was probably leaving. Arriving at the basement again, she starts unlocking it, thinking that once again she would be left behind. And when the young man left, she would be alone again. She opens the door, thinking that there would be no one waiting for her, no friend she could talk to. Unlocking the chains, all the painful thoughts turned against the girl. But Desi could finally feel the night breeze again. He opens his eyes. Looking at the horizon, Celiana wonders whether he had always been that tall. The girl thinks that if she imagined this as Desi finally being free, and not as if he were leaving her, her heart felt a little lighter. It was for his own good, after all, even though the sadness still remained. Then Desi says that he was there, and the girl becomes a little confused. The young man explains that he had seen the horses up close while he was being washed by the servants that day. He approaches the horses while Celiana asks whether the young man knows how to ride them. Desi explains that he does not, but points out that they seem to have been well fattened and looked very delicious. All this while licking his lips in anticipation. The protagonist wondered what that was about. But suddenly, a horrible scene unfolds in front of her, leaving her completely perplexed. Desi, with one hand, killing the horse in front of him and beginning to devour it, like the beast he truly was, his vertical pupils glowing. The girl stood there, horrified, motionless, watching everything without reacting. Looking at her, completely covered in blood, Desi asks if everything was all right. From the shadows, the beast looks at her, calling her by name. The girl remains horrified by the scene, slowly backing away, while Desi asked what was wrong. The protagonist turns around and runs away in disgust, her mind in conflict. After all, Desi had just killed the horse. After all that, she just ran around aimlessly. She does not even remember exactly how she got back to her room. It rained on the estate, but the next day a maid called her name, asking whether she was awake and if she could come in. The girl confirms a little apathetically. The maid enters, asking whether she happened to know what had happened the previous night. Ellie interrupts herself, startled to see the protagonist hugging a pillow and looking depressed in bed, then asking whether the girl was all right. After all, it seemed that she had not even closed her eyes during the night. A little sadly, she replies that she had only slept badly, that was all, asking what had happened. The woman then says the same thing that was going through the girl's mind, the fact that a horse had died the previous night. It was that same horse the Count kept as if it were a treasure. They said it had died in a horrible way, several huge claw marks deeply embedded in its body as if a beast had gone there, and the one responsible was probably a wild animal, Ellie concludes. But Celiana is confused. After all, something was strange. Desi had not been mentioned in that story. Curious, she then asks whether it really was a wild animal. The woman confirms it, but says that they had no idea at all how it got in or out. Because of the rain, all traces had been erased, and the guard responsible for protecting that horse was now being punished, currently locked in the basement. The other knights who had also been too lax were punished as well and were scolded. The girl asks whether everything was all right, since Desi was also in the basement. The woman does not understand, so she explains that, well, she was talking about him, but the maid says that it was his fault, whether one liked it or not. The basement was not even where they had intended to lock the guard up in the first place, but apparently the idiot had also lost the key, so when they tried to retrieve it, he had finally confessed, so his punishment ended up being to be tied up tightly and thrown in there, right beside the cell of the beast he had been torturing all this time. Celiana then becomes a little worried, asking whether Desi was still down there. Ellie replies that that was obvious. After all, he belonged in that place, and now that they had lost the keys, he probably would not see the surface for quite some time. But regardless of that, if the young woman decided to eat now, she should go downstairs. In her mind, the protagonist wondered where the hell she might have put the keys. The whole previous night was a blur in her mind. She had simply forgotten. The girl had opened the door, so they should have been in her hands. But after that, she had handed them to Desi. With that, she finally realized the keys were with him. So right after that, he had gone back down to the basement again. But one thing would not leave Celiana's mind. Why would he do that? A few days pass. Hawk, that guard, was sent away from the estate. Obviously, there was no way to escape that fate. He had lost the keys and had not even properly looked after the horse. He was lucky to be able to leave with both legs still attached to his body. After all that, things stayed quiet for a while. They said that a locksmith might come and make a new key, and Desi continued his life in chains. The maids went down there against their will, frightened of the beast behind the bars. He had even torn some of the clothes he had been given. While listening to the complaints, Desi listened in silence, his yellow eyes glowing in the darkness of the cell. The two maids swallow hard at the sight, and leaving a bowl for him, they leave as fast as they can. Even though he was still there, Celiana did not feel like seeing him at the moment. But after a few more days, an incident began. First, a single chicken, then 3 pigs, and finally 2 sheep, all found with their bodies disfigured. The count was consumed by rage, shouting and questioning how they had not found the beast that caused all of this, claiming that this was the work of the same creature that killed his precious horse, reprimanding everyone for knowing nothing about it. The servants complained in whispers. After all, the count was taking all the burden out on them. People inside and outside the estate complained about what had happened. One worker states that they checked all the routes to the mountains and found no trace at all. The count reprimanded him, questioning whether that made any sense, but the protagonist could only grow nervous at the scene. After all, her father had forgotten what he himself had brought into the mansion. He was looking for his answers in the wrong places. No one there even suspected Desi. If things continued like this, she wondered whether she should tell someone. Her mind begins to darken, her thoughts clouded by anxiety. Suddenly, the girl hears her father shouting for her. Startled awake, Celiana turns around. The count asks how she dared not pay attention while he was speaking. The man states that they told him she had been acting very strangely these past few days. Approaching her, the count asks why she was trembling like that, questioning whether the young woman knew anything. Almost stuttering, Celiana says that on that day, she was only looking for her lost doll, and that she did not know anything, apologizing for acting strangely, claiming that she was only bored and that it would not happen again. Her father stares at her for a moment, and turning away, the man states that everything was fine since there was no way she could know anything anyway, pointing out that everyone there was useless. Celiana sighs, her body almost giving out. Suddenly, the count shouts the name of a worker, asking what the current status was. The man states that a hunter would arrive tomorrow. The count is satisfied. A hunter would be able to locate the beast's trail, and when he did that, the count himself would make a point of cutting the animal to pieces. Another day arrives, a man coming to the mansion along with his dogs. The count greets him, claiming that he did not know he would come so quickly. Ellie whispers in Celiana's ear, pointing out that he should be the hunter he mentioned before. The girl is surprised that he has already arrived. The maid says that the timing was perfect. Now they would finally be able to breathe a little, asking her mistress to also look at the bow on his back. Apparently, that hunter only went after rare beasts, saying that the harder and rarer the target, the better the hunt would be. The protagonist is stunned. After all, they brought someone of that caliber just because of a few dead animals. Ellie only says that this just means that what is happening in their village is not normal, and that in any case they should leave now, because it would not be good to let her see something so brutal for too long. Celiana tries to comfort herself in her mind. Since no one even suspected Desi, the hunter watches the girl leave, pointing out that she was a lovely lady. With an irritated expression, the count says that she should be the jewel of his house, and that with a pretty face, she could very well help the family someday. But recently she had not been so obedient, going out without permission again. But that was enough. Turning his focus back to the current problem, the count explains that since the man was the expert there, he should guide them in the right direction. They walk across the estate, the count presenting some of his hunts, some birds he shot in the forest, trying to show off a little. The hunter then asks them to talk a little more about the current problem, claiming that he had heard there were no tracks or even a single beast near the places. Coughing and composing himself, the count confirms it, saying that the first victim had been his horse. When he was about to boast about the animal's bloodline, the hunter interrupts him again, asking only for the information about the beast. Returning to the point, he explains that right after that, the village's livestock also began to be attacked in the same way. Their bellies were completely ripped open, and there were signs that they had been eaten while still alive. However, they still had not been able to tell what thing had caused that, there not even being any witness at the scene. The Count complains that someone had dared to touch his property, and after that he would repay them with misery, hanging his head in front of everyone so they could watch. In silence, the hunter thinks that the damage to the village mattered little to that man, who seemed more interested in the things he himself had lost. He then says that for something that large to disappear without leaving tracks, it must be exceptionally intelligent. And when asked about his plan, he says that first he would use his dog friends, who would help track it by scent. Hearing that, the Count apparently gets an idea, pointing out that they also had a special kind of dog locked up inside that estate. The hunter then becomes intrigued. The Count continues, explaining that it was not the type one sees just anywhere, and would probably even be better than his dogs, and that if he were willing, he could show it to him right now. The man becomes a little curious, and thinking about the case, he agrees to go with him. Both of them go down to the basement of the estate. The Count was telling a story that he had paid a slave trader and bought him. Probably none of them had ever been tamed before. The hunter then warns that this type is rare, questioning whether they would keep it in a place like that. The man explains that he was still a beast despite everything, so there was nothing else to do. It was necessary. The man's dogs begin to sniff around and show a bit of anxiety. He comforts them, saying that everything was fine. The Count says that it was smelling a bit strong, but they had just received a new prisoner, and his idiot servants did not want to come down there alone, so no one had cleaned the place for some time. In front of the cell, he says it was right there, also pointing out that it had been quite a while since he had come there himself. He bangs on the bars, telling the creature inside to stop hiding. The silence lasts for a while, and suddenly, yellow eyes are seen in the dark. The dogs are startled and back away while footsteps approach out of the darkness, Desi finally becoming visible to everyone. He stares at the animals. The Count wonders whether he had always been that big, while the hunter is a little frightened, analyzing every detail with careful eyes, until the man screams and runs away, as if his life depended on it, together with his dogs. The Count is startled, asking why that was happening. The hunter shouts, telling the man to follow him, so both of them run, and the hunter finally makes it back to the estate hall. Accompanied by shouts, panting, he says how the hell was that something normal? The Count does not understand, and turning around with sweat running down his face, the hunter explains that that was a werewolf. The Count becomes confused, not understanding very well. The hunter gets worked up, questioning what he had been thinking by feeding him so well. That way they would not even be able to control him. Fallen to the floor, trying to understand the situation, the Count explains that they barely fed him. Still nervous, the hunter explains that he should listen very carefully, and that werewolves were not just any ordinary kind of beast. They were creatures cruel by nature, and a race that could not be domesticated, especially when one of them was wounded. Each one of them would rise for a bloody revenge, an absolutely terrifying race. They were persistent and relentless killers. The silence lingers in the room, all the servants frightened. The man continues, saying that once there was a village that captured a young werewolf. They ignored his warnings, and what happened was nothing more than expected. Everyone was horrifically torn apart by the pack that came seeking revenge. The servants listened to all that in fear, while wondering what they were going to do. After all, no one there wanted to die. The Count does not understand anything, saying that the slave trader had said it was nothing more than an osk. The hunter says that he has seen both, and that was definitely a werewolf. Questioning what they should do now, he looks at the Count from above, still with a perplexed and nervous expression. Some time passes. Seated at the tables, her father talked with her brothers, Celiana eating beside them. She wondered whether Desi was hunting again that night, hoping that he would not go hunting since the men were looking for him. The Count then explains that there was a problem, saying that they should destroy the seed of evil wherever it might sprout, stating that they should not leave anything down there. They would deal with it in the morning, so it was better to drain his strength as much as possible until then. Before dawn, they would gather the men who knew how to handle spears, and at dawn they would kill him. Her brother agrees. She realizes that the conversation had been going on for a while and is shocked by what she heard. Spears and weapons were stacked in the storage room. Out in the yard, the Count asks whether all the preparations were ready. A worker says yes, that everyone was waiting and would gather as soon as the sun rose. He asks whether they should increase the internal security of the estate as well, but the Count refuses, saying that it was not really necessary, that by this point, the beast should already be without strength, and at dawn they would have a great deal of work to do, so everyone should rest well. At last, he would make one final check of the plan. The Count says that he did not expect it to come to this, but he was actually thinking about decorating his estate with a head as big as that, and that was making him a little excited, so they should go inside soon. From the window, Ellie and Celiana watched. the maid saying that it was already very late and that she should not be walking around. But the protagonist, with a worried face, could not help it. Ellie then said that even if she could not sleep, she should not do that. She should just lie down and try to fall asleep soon. The girl then asks whether they were really going to try to kill that child, Desi. Ellie replies that it was obvious. They said that he was not just any beast and that he was extremely dangerous, feeling a shiver just thinking about it, then pointing out that they should go inside soon and that Celiana, under no circumstances or for any reason, should leave her room that night. Asking whether she understood that, with the door closed and isolated in there, the girl's legs give out and she falls to the floor, anxiety taking hold of her. Finally realizing that when the day began, Desi would die, she had barely thought that this could happen someday. But she thought that he would leave that cage and have a normal life, a free life. He only needed to cover his ears and go out in public normally, but all that fantasy was destroyed by what she had seen. Thoughts and memories come rushing back. People saying that she should not get attached to a beast like that. Her father saying that if he could not be tamed, they should kill him. And the hunter himself calling him a seed of evil, and that they should destroy him before he spread, before the beasts came to seek revenge for him. They needed to get rid of him first. All those thoughts kept piling up. The girl wondered why Desi had not gone away, since technically he could, because he had the key to his prison. If he had gone away that day, the protagonist would not have to worry about any of this. She wondered whether she should just close her eyes and let everything happen. If she only opened her eyes in the morning, maybe it would all already be over. While thinking, she is startled. A loud noise takes over the mansion. Everyone wonders what that sound is. A maid, feeling chills, says that the beast probably knew what was coming and was screaming. The hunter said that apparently it was finally crying out for something, but that did not matter anymore. After all, there was nothing else they could do to help now. Desi remained sitting in his prison, the key in his hand, thoughtful. He sniffed the air, seeming to wait for something. From her room, Celiana wondered whether he was looking for her. All the memories they lived together came rushing back at once, their moments and conversations. She remembers having seen him for herself, even the parts that no one else knew. If she simply let him die that way, she would never be able to forgive herself for the rest of her life. Then, motivated, she opens the bedroom door. There were fewer people in the estate than usual, probably because they were hiding, frightened by everything. If she went down there now, maybe no one would notice. As she went down, one thought kept surfacing. She simply could not let him die like that. When she gets downstairs, Desi quickly stands up and approaches the bars, calling her, apologizing for everything. He says that before, back then, he only wanted to prove that he could hunt on his own, and he did not think that she would be so shocked by that. After that, he explains that he tried to hold back for a while, but he was so hungry that he ended up going out again. He thought everything would be fine as long as he did not eat the animals from inside the estate. Hearing all that, Celiana asks if he had waited there all that time just to say that. In that place so filthy, cold, and where no one brought him anything to eat. And even so, he had simply waited. He nods, saying that he waited only because he knew she would come. The girl is surprised to hear that, and with the doors open, she simply hugs him, saying that they should just get him out of there and leave. Holding her hand, he goes up the stairs, dawn appearing on the horizon. All the men were gathering and organizing themselves to attack him, but he was no longer there, bracing himself against a wall with his hands like claws, while holding the girl. Someone comments that it really was dangerous, but behind those walls, the creature was trapped, so they should be able to deal with it easily. Little did they know that Desi was jumping with Celiana behind the walls. He then begins his escape with the girl in his arms, and, upon reaching the other side, he sets her down on the ground. At last, taking in the view of the horizon, Celiana thinks that Desi was a little different. He was not some kind of evil beast or anything like that. The boy looked at her from the corner of his eye, saying that they should go now, but she only remained silent. Looking back, the protagonist sees the entire estate and, feeling a little sad, says that she could not go, since she belonged to that place, finally saying goodbye to him. The boy is shocked by those words, as if the sun illuminated only him, while the darkness embraced her. He asks why they could not leave that place together. Celiana explains that that was her home. It was where her family lived, so it was where she should stay. She comments that the past few days must have been difficult for Desi, and apologizes for that, saying goodbye again. In his mind, Desi wonders if that was really how everything was going to end, if that was really real, but he refuses, hugging her. She does not understand, calling him in confusion. The young man explains that if that was how it was, then he would not go anywhere either. He says that he could not leave her side, remembering his past. Desi had been born without a tail, and without one, he was not even truly a member of the clan. He remembers the murmurs throughout his whole life. People laughing while saying that he could not even transform under a full moon, saying that he was a disgrace to everyone, and that they could not keep someone like that close, while they abandoned him. One of the members of the group asks if they were really just going to leave him there, asking what would happen if he were captured by humans. Meanwhile, another werewolf simply says that it was not their problem, asking if he really thought that anyone from the clan would send the others to save him or something like that. After all, the boy was, at best, incompatible with their kind. After all that, he was simply thrown into some basement of a rich estate. While looking at that place, he realized that it must be the estate of that bastard count's family. He was simply dragged into that filthy basement, and there he was, having that kind of dream again, wondering if it was because he had been captured by humans. But he still felt like trash. In that completely cold and lonely place, he wondered if that was how he was going to live from then on. But then something changed. A different scent in the air. A blonde and timid girl slowly approaching him. At first, he only looked at her coldly, remembering that she was the child he had seen earlier on the estate. He wondered if the girl was just going to keep staring again in that same way, looking at her and trying to get closer, but being stopped by the chains, throwing himself to the ground. He thinks that he had frightened her, so she probably would not come back again, having a little peace, returning once again to his solitude. After all, no one there would come to help him. No one. But something changed. The girl came back asking if he was hungry and brought some bread with her. He wondered, why had she come back? At that moment, the young woman had a somewhat strange posture. After all, why would she be bringing him food? Eating from her hand? He thinks that food was still food either way, so he had to take advantage while he had the chance. While listening to the girl's introductions, he only thought that she had a somewhat strange name, hearing the way she called him. He felt a little strange receiving that name, but one thought always came back. Why did the girl keep returning? And while she held his ear, he wondered, why was she grabbing that? Feeling his ears were very sensitive. Listening to all of the girl's stories, Desi finally realized there was someone who had been just as lonely as he was all this time too, trapped in that place completely alone. He was not the only one. Once again, Celiana came to bring him food, but all he could think was that they should leave that place together. That they could live together. Once they got out of there, they would no longer need to sacrifice themselves anymore, and they could even take revenge on those who had made them feel that way. Believing that she might even like that, Desi wanted to show how strong he was, that he could manage on his own. But he only ruined everything. The sight of that act only frightened her. Desi wonders why, whether perhaps she hated blood or something like that, whether it was because he killed the horse or something like that. He wondered if he should just leave alone. But if he did that, that would be the last time he would see her. And leaving that girl behind like that she was strange. She laughed too much, and her hands were gentle. She even became lonely easily. So how could he leave alone and leave her there? No, he refuses. She could not just do that. Wiping the blood away with his clothes, Desi wondered if he should look for her outside. But he remembers that he would probably only scare her again. So he decided to wait until the girl returned once more, just like before. Thus, staring at the chains, he realizes that he ended up there again, in that old place. That day he also could have left, but he could not. Desi explains that if he left, they would be alone again. And with that, Celiana would be alone in that house forever. She thinks that since she was born, she has always felt pushed aside. Gripping his clothes more tightly, her mother was indifferent. Her father did not consider her important, and her sister, whom she considered the most important, like a friend, left the estate for something greater. No one made her a priority. But now, it was different. She comments that if Desi wanted to be happy, he should leave. But the young man says that he would not leave her. The girl explains that he would probably die if he stayed there. The young man said that even so, he would not leave. He would not leave her, and that his place was beside her. While she hugged him, the tears fell without end. The protagonist thinks that Desi was different from everyone else. Someone was finally making her a priority. Maybe that was why, for the first time, she gave in to a selfish desire. A desire meant only for her. Then the girl asks him to listen, asking him to be happy by her side, and promising that she would make him happy. While the whole romantic scene unfolded at the top of the castle, the guards below were ready to invade the basement, asking, while shouting, what the hell had happened, since the chains had been undone and the cage was open, some of them wondering if they had let the beast out. A guard then says that the missing key might be with him, another realizing that he was probably the one who had killed the livestock outside. As he ran, the count asked what these idiots were doing. since they could not even keep watch over the creature imprisoned on his estate, calling them useless parasites. Ignoring all of them, he says that he does not care about that right now, and that he would look for her himself. In the protagonist's room, Desi held her by the waist on the balcony. The girl says that he is welcome, and that this was her room. He finds it a little strange as he looks around, probably not used to so much luxury. For now, Celiana explains that Desi should live in her room, and during the time they were cleaning, he should hide in the wardrobe. Since it was full of valuable objects, no one would look there, happily, pointing out that at night they could share the bed so he could lie there. Extremely excited, the young woman says that this way they could sleep together every night, finding that extremely exciting. This was the first time she had brought a man into her room since she was little. Frozen and nervous, the young man thinks that this is a little strange. The girl asks why. Desi then points out what she would say if someone walked in while they were like this right now. The protagonist only says innocently that Desi should just hide under the blanket, since he should move fast and should be strong enough for that. He imagines the scene of himself hiding under the blankets, just staring at her feet, and he does not seem very comfortable with the idea. Getting up, the young man says that this would not work, and thinks that this whole hiding story, especially hiding in her bed, is strange too. Celiana asks why he thinks that. Blushing and with his back turned, the young man says that it was because all of this was too soft, just like her. The protagonist does not understand what that means, so he explains that anyway, sleeping in the same bed was not something he could do, and points to the top of the bed, saying that he would probably stay there. She is a little surprised and says that it was very cozy there, and that Desi should not be stubborn. He should just sleep with her. Answering back, he simply states that he is not being stubborn. She tried to argue and pull him for quite a while, but Desi simply did not give in. So, if she had not gotten tired and fallen asleep, he thinks that maybe she would have convinced him, but that was not exactly the case. With that, we end with the girl asleep while he watched in a somewhat stalker-like way from on top of the bed. Meanwhile, the whole estate was in complete chaos. They searched the entire estate from top to bottom, the forest, and supposedly even to the last speck of dirt, using the hunter's tracking dogs. Her father, unable to find him, grew more nervous day by day, but she felt happy every time she remembered that the young man was in her room. Sometime later, the maid goes to her room, saying that apparently the count had already lost his appetite for some time, and so the meals would be served separately from now on. Cheerfully, the girl agrees that that was fine with her, asking if, more importantly than that, she could have a little more meat. Ellie does not understand, asking why she would be asking that at breakfast time. When the woman leaves, Desi slowly comes down and opens the wardrobe door, hidden there like a kitten in a box. Then the young man shares his meals with her, saying that she would steal much more from the storage room in the afternoon, so he should just wait a little. But the young man explains that that was enough for now, and that, more importantly, he asks whether, when she was not going to the basement, Celiana was alone in that room, wondering what that maid was doing, since she was not taking very good care of her, instead running around like a lost child. Eating calmly and a little cheerfully, Desi just calls her mean, leaving her embarrassed. The girl explains that she was not alone and that she had another friend, asking if he would like to see it, bringing him the doll her sister gave them as a gift, asking if it was not pretty, and finally calling him to play with dolls. Desi makes a completely stunned face, asking if she was serious. The girl says that now that he is here, the doll no longer needed to play the role of the baby, since the young man could do that. A comment that leaves him understanding nothing. But Celiana just says that he should imitate a baby, mimicking a crying voice. He laughs, asking what kind of baby cried like that. He simply gives up and lies there, saying that this is the best he can do, but that is already enough to cheer the girl up. Then the protagonist begins to play with his ears, saying that when she stroked them, they moved a little. She asks whether she should sing a lullaby to help him sleep, but he stays silent for a while. With all of this happening, 3 days pass quickly. Shouts once again echoed through the estate. It seems that this was quite normal around there. A voice shouted, asking what he was supposed to do at this rate, telling him to wait a little longer. But the hunter, hearing that, disagrees, saying that he is leaving, that if they did nothing, they would come back with the full pack, and if that happened, they could wipe out the whole place. If he had known it involved a werewolf, he would never have gone there in the first place. The count scolded him as the man walked away, wondering if that was really the kind of person the famous hunter was. Calling the butler, he asked how he had dared to bring such a cowardly man and call him a hunter. The man only apologized, bowing. Turning to his son, the count said that, as the heir, he should be doing something. The boy simply said that he was the one who had bought the beast, so he should not take it out on him. Irritated, his father only said that this was not the time to list who was to blame, and that if the beast brought its pack, they would all be dead. The young man only sighed, tired of all of that, watching his father go inside while shouting that everyone was useless and that they would choose a hunter on their own. The boy's expression darkened as he said that when his father died, he would be the one who would win. Night then falls. Celiana comments, asking how Desi ended up being captured. He thinks for a moment, sitting on top of the bed. The protagonist says that if it was hard to talk about, he did not need to do it. But Desi denies it, explaining that he was left behind among his siblings, so it could be said that he was abandoned. The girl is shocked to hear that. He explains that he was born without a tail, and even on full moon nights, he could not fully transform into a wolf, still pointing out that it was not his siblings' fault, it was just how wolves worked. The girl stays silent, listening. The young man continues, saying that for a while he kept wandering alone through the forest, and then this ended up happening. Turning to her, Desi asks why she was getting sad. She then says that the young man had grown up very well, and that in the end there was nothing wrong with him. Desi shrugs, wondering if anyone really knew that, then goes downstairs. He says that everything was fine now, and that there was no reason to worry about it. Celiana says that the boy was important to her, and holding his hand, says that she did not want to abandon him. He smiles a little and watches her, holding her hand back. Now that she was with him, the protagonist no longer felt lonely. Desi had devoured her loneliness and slowly filled the space inside her heart. He was large enough to fill it completely. On the balcony of her room, Celiana asks if, even if he was hunting in the mountains, he still needed to go out at night. He explains that it is better that way, since it would be harder to get caught. And it was like that she ended up silently clinging to him. Asking him to be careful, the young man only agrees, but warns her to rest this time, and that they would see each other later. Little by little, she became a girl who felt that she could not live without him. Winter then grew a little harsher, the snow piling up on the trees. Once again, Desi climbed up to the balcony of the estate. He says that he is back, and Celiana comes to greet him. Apparently, time had passed. 3 years flew by like the wind, and now it was winter. The servants cleaned the snow, while some maids said they were already exhausted early in the morning, and that she would probably be returning now after so much time. One of them says that for her, it was all very easy, since all she needed to do was take care of Miss Celiana. Ellie snaps back, saying that if it were so easy, her wrist would not be hurting so much, and that now she should hurry so they should talk badly about her in moderation. The mansion was agitated, and meanwhile, some people said that, by the way, the protagonist was becoming more and more beautiful. She had already been beautiful since she was little, but ever since she recently became an adult, the situation had improved even more. Knocking on her door, Ellie called for her, and the girl said she could come in. A little surprised, the maid calls out to her, finding it strange where the young woman was, asking why she was standing there, asking if she had not slept at night. The young woman turns around, saying that was not the case. She had only woken up early, asking them if today was the day she would be returning. The protagonist does not understand, asking what she was talking about. The maid then says that it was the day Olivia, her sister, would be returning home. In the winter, the protagonist had turned 17 years old, and with that, her sister would probably graduate from the academy and return to the estate. This would be the first time they would see each other in 5 years. Calling her by the nickname Sally, the woman approaches and goes in for a hug. She says that the girl had grown into a beautiful lady, asking how she had grown so well, arguing that she had almost not recognized her until she saw her face, asking her to show the face of her beautiful little sister. A little uninterested, the protagonist receives her. She is a little shocked by the reaction and says that the girl is probably still upset, apologizing for not having kept in touch much. After all, Celiana was probably hurt since she had not written very often. Then Olivia hugs her. Celiana says that it is all right now and that she missed her very much after all that time. She then asks, by the way, what had been happening since she left. After all, the number of guards seemed to have increased a lot, with many knights and servants, and the whole atmosphere was different from before. Celiana says that it was nothing, and that her father was only getting nervous. Stopping to think, Olivia asks where they were. The protagonist explains that her father was in the territory, and her mother still could not get up because of the medicine, claiming that her mother probably did not think the young woman would arrive so early. Her sister asks if her mother was still locked in the room, with her nerves on edge. The protagonist says yes. Huffing a little, her sister says that she was not always like that. When she was little, the woman used to read books to her all the time. A little discouraged, the protagonist agrees, but thinks that the woman had never done that for her even once, and asks how her life at the academy was. Radiant, the girl says it was great. She says she was free and could study whatever she wanted or whenever she wanted. The tasks were difficult, but the feeling of finishing them was always very rewarding. And that, believe it or not, her sister had graduated with good grades. The girl says that sounded very fun. Her sister comments that she should try going to the academy too. Trying to stall a little, Celiana says that she must be a little tired from the long carriage ride and that she should rest a little. The young woman agrees, saying that just thinking about unpacking everything was already giving her a headache, and waving to her says that they would see each other at dinner. The protagonist says goodbye then and returns to her room. She thinks that she tried to say that she wanted to go to the academy like her sister, but all she received was reprimand and no one really listened to her. Then someone asks what she was doing there, snapping the girl out of her thoughts. She realizes it was Desi sitting at a nearby table. Asking why he was back so early, Desi asks if she had met her sister since she had been excited about it over the past few days. The girl says yes, and that for a while he needed to stay quiet since her room was near there. He nods, asking if it was the room at the end of the hallway. Understanding that, he says he will be careful. The girl then notices there was a small leaf in his hair, and bringing her hand closer, she remembers that last time his clothes were damp with the morning dew, but Desi only gets startled and dodges a little. The protagonist does not understand why, and he asks in surprise. She explains that she was only trying to remove something from his hair. Embarrassed, Desi says he could do that himself and that he was fine while messing up his own hair. She thinks that lately the young man had been acting a little strange. If Celiana tried to hold his hand or hug him like before, he would get startled and pull away, and while she begged him to sleep with her, the young man would only withdraw and say that it was very difficult, and he did not even say why he had recently become like that. She felt a little strange, wondering if perhaps he was starting to hate her. So the girl decides to be direct and asks why he was avoiding her. Surprised, Desi suddenly turns around. Celiana explains that he had been coming back late all this time, and even on full moon nights, he disappeared all day and she could not find him. She even says that maybe he was having more fun outside than with her, but the young man interrupts her, saying that he had only been looking for prey and ended up going a little too far. However, sometimes he came back even without managing to hunt anything and went out again even during the day. He cannot explain it very well, leaving the girl with a sad expression. The young werewolf stays quiet, looking at her, and says that it is nothing, and that anyway, she was still small, throwing himself on top of her. Irritated, she says that she had grown a lot too, but the boy had just gotten way too huge. He agrees normally, but Selenia sighs, realizing that he is changing the subject again. Her frustration was so great that it lingered on the tip of her tongue. However, Desi's arms were so warm that she ended up swallowing the words again, as always happened. Then, as night fell, it was time for dinner. Her father sat at the head of the table as always, and her older brother at the right, and her mother at the left, with her sister beside her. Her father said that it looked like it was going to snow, so he ordered them to clear the path no matter what. Celiana thinks that, starting today, the seat in front of her would be occupied again, just like 9 years ago. Her father continues, saying that the servants were so useless and seemed extremely moved by his order. Her sister interrupts him, asking where her younger brother was, saying that the way they treated him was pathetic, just because he had stuttered a little. Celiana and her brother are a little confused by what she said, and her father is extremely irritated. The Count comments that, apparently, she had wasted 5 years at the academy studying and still had not learned anything about etiquette. She fires back, saying that she had obviously learned, including how to say what needed to be said at the right moment. Her father then tells her that if she had learned anything, apparently it was a waste of time, since she was lowering her value in some ridiculous place, stating that he knew he should never have sent her there. Hearing all that, Celiana only lowers her head a little. The woman then says that her value was hers alone to decide, and that it had not diminished at all. Irritated, her father then points out that her fiancé will arrive tomorrow morning, and that she was lucky for someone to be willing to accept someone of such low value who still had not married. The girl is surprised, but he continues, pointing out that she should present herself well and stay quiet. After all, with a pretty face, it would be great if she kept her mouth shut. Then Sylvia slams the table, saying that she had no intention at all of meeting someone her father had chosen, pointing out that she had met a man at the academy and wanted to marry him. Everyone is surprised by the Count's reaction. He simply throws his hand against the table, the wine glass flying and spilling everything, staining her cloth. He wonders what that was supposed to be. Questioning whether she really thought she could decide that on her own, the girl says that she was leaving his life, so yes, she would be the one to decide for herself, and that the old man should not think he could control her like when she was a child. Her father loses control and starts shouting, as if he knew how to do anything else. questioning whether she had any idea where the money that paid her college tuition came from, even the food and what she drank. Everything came out of his pocket. Her siblings watched a little frightened. Olivia then explains that she would pay back everything she received by working, and that she could get a good job. Her father questions whether she was really saying that she was going to work, while stating that he knew he should never have sent her to the academy, but her mother had begged so much that he ended up agreeing on the condition that she marry the moment she came back. The girl is surprised, and turning to her mother, she asks what that meant, questioning whether the woman had really sent her to the academy in exchange for her marriage. The woman stutters a little, and looking down, she only states that they should lock Olivia in her room and that they should not let her leave until she reflected on herself. Astonished, the girl calls out to her mother, questioning how she could do that to her, but the maids quickly grab her by the arms and say that they should go now. The girl starts screaming, pointing out that her mother should be the one supporting her. Everyone ignores her screams as she is taken to the back. The count says that Olivia had become extremely full of herself during that period, and since they had touched on the subject, his wife should make sure to collect on that, which she agrees to. At the table, Celiana was trembling while clutching her own dress, while her father kicked the table and said they had ruined his appetite. A maid then leads her mother away, asking whether she was all right since her face was a little pale. Her brother, meanwhile, got up saying that all of that had been a great spectacle. Alone at the table, the girl trembled, seeing all the chaos that had happened in her family. The fear she had felt since childhood, which she thought she had forgotten, came back all at once. She thought everything would be fine now, that she only had to sleep with the lights off. She was afraid of her father and afraid that something might happen to her sister again. Her sister was very kind to her, but walking through the estate, she thinks that sometimes she also felt like a volcano that could erupt at any moment. Arriving at the room, the girl calls for Desi, but all she gets back is silence. He had gone out again. She throws herself onto her bed, alone, and stays silent. When night falls, someone touches her face. Desi was saying that he was back, asking what had happened. Without much reaction, she only says that her sister had argued with her father. Since her father had arranged a marriage for her, she was so frightened that she thought someone might end up getting hurt during dinner. And if her sister said that she wanted to die again, she did not know what she would do. Sitting beside her, Desi explains that if something happened to her, he would protect her, so she should not be frightened. Selenia tries to form an answer, but only says that she is afraid her sister will get hurt. That was what truly worried her. Then she holds his hand, feeling a little relieved by his touch. He asks what he should do then, since he was not planning to protect anyone besides her. The girl says that he really had a horrible personality and points out that he was not like that when he was younger. Desi says that he had always been like that since back then, and comments that if he could say something even worse, he would like to wish that she had no family after everything. She points out that this is really terrible. The young man asks whether she really thinks her sister would end up getting hurt. After all, probably 9 out of 10 noble ladies got married that way. Celiana then asks what would happen to the one that remained. The boy explains that that one would be the one who fell in love with some random guy and ran away with him. The protagonist is a little surprised to hear that, and he explains that there were many stories about young ladies who ran away with knights, and that this was quite common. She lets go of his hand, saying that she understood, commenting on the story of a young lady running away with her knight in shining armor, betting that all those girls were probably happy out there. He becomes a little disappointed. After all, she had let go of his hand. Then he disagrees, saying that a spoiled young lady would normally have difficulty surviving an ordinary life. The protagonist says that even so, she would still be with someone she loves, so that feeling would be happiness. Wondering whether she could do that too, just like the young ladies who run away with knights. With a slight touch of jealousy, he asks whether there was any knight she liked, asking who it was. She says not yet, that all the knights she knew were arrogant and smelly, and that those guys would be expelled from their families eventually anyway. Desi says that she was really annoying. Then an etiquette teacher arrived at the estate. Instead of sending her to the academy, her father brought her an etiquette teacher who would come teach about the virtues of a proper noble lady. Maybe he thought that her sister also needed that education, because during class it was the only time he let her leave her room. However, all they managed to do was tear up the writings. She said that it was absurd, asking what kind of sex education they had been giving Selenia all this time, questioning what that thing was about, a woman who should simply stay quiet and let the man do whatever he wanted, saying that it was something incredibly old and archaic. The teacher only watched in shock, saying that it was horrible for an unmarried young lady to be saying something like that anyway, asking if she was not ashamed to say such a thing. Her sister then says that the woman should be the one ashamed. She had graduated from the academy in the capital, and even so, they were trying to teach her that way as soon as she returned. Selenia stood there thinking that they were fighting again. The argument unfolded, while Selivia claimed that in the capital there was nothing so degrading like that, and that her teaching was extremely old, wrong, suffocating, and oppressive. The woman then leaves, saying that she would tell tell the Countess everything right now, Sylvia shoots back saying that she could go ahead, that then they would just see how pathetic she was as a teacher, and that she should never come back again. The protagonist herself stands there, innocently asking that if the teacher left, how was she supposed to learn? Her sister simply said that she did not need to learn nonsense like that, and that they did not know what women were really like. Then the protagonist is left confused, wondering what she was supposed to do, questioning that if she was not supposed to just stand still, then what was she supposed to do? Her sister is a little embarrassed, but Selenia continues, explaining that since she had scared the teacher away, she should take her place, and asks her to teach her how bed things worked. The protagonist then explains that she learned that a lady should fulfill her nightly duty for her husband. However, they also said that if you simply stayed still, the other person would take care of everything. So nothing beyond that was explained, just as her sister Sylvia was telling her. So she was excited to know more. However, on the other side, her sister was in deep despair, wondering why this judgment was falling on her. Looking over her fingers, she explains that even the expression nightly duty was wrong and was such a dark way of seeing what happened. Calling it an obligation, a duty, sounded wrong when it should be something both did together joyfully. The protagonist did not understand, so she wondered to herself how both could do it together and be happy. Her sister explains that she calls it embracing someone, but her sister does not understand, taking it literally, and hugging her says that she could hug her too. Sweet Home Alabama, Sylvia explains with a laugh that it was nothing like that, but it could be kind of similar. Hugging her, she explains that it is soft and warm, and that sometimes you can hear the other person's heart beating, and that makes her shiver. And you also do something that makes her feel good with someone you love. Selenia focuses on that last part, and her sister explains that it would be strange and even disgusting to hug someone you did not like, or even someone you had never met. Thinking about the scene of hugging her father, all of that could only be very horrible. Agreeing, her sister explains that she should do that with someone she loved. If you knew him as a person and not as an object, you would be able to love each other mutually. And with that, you could have a relationship full of happiness or something like that. The protagonist is enchanted listening to that, saying that she really must love the person she was talking about, since her cheeks had turned red. Curious, the girl asks what kind of man her sister had promised to marry, and Sylvia becomes a little shy, saying that she met him at the academy and that he was the hard-working type. The young man worked in a bookstore to pay his expenses, and his grades were excellent, asking if that was not incredible. The protagonist then realizes that she had never seen her sister make that face before, and she keeps saying that the boy was a little shy, but he looked cute when he looked at her. The protagonist thinks that she looked really truly happy about that. The girl then finishes, explaining that that was why she could not marry her father's arranged fiancé, and should return to the one she loves. And because of that, she would be leaving in the next few days. Her sister would come back to say goodbye, but once she was gone, that would be a shame. She explains that she was not planning to leave forever, but from the way everyone around her was reacting, she did not have much choice. Sylvia said that her future husband would come get her eventually. He was already on the way. Then she sits at the table sighing. The protagonist thinks that for some reason, she felt that her sister could live well and happily, regardless of the kind of chaos she was involved in. She was the type of person who wanted to choose the person by her side. Even if things became difficult, Sylvia would manage to overcome them in the end. And once she wanted something, she was the type who would give her body and soul to achieve it, no matter the cost. So she wondered what she was supposed to do now. She could not continue in that state, since she could not go to the academy anymore. So she asks her sister how she was going to do that, while mentally wondering whether she would really end up like one of those 9 girls Desi talked about, the kind that ends up marrying someone her father chose. Then Selenia returns to the subject, saying that her sister explained that this decision was good, but did not explain how to do it. She becomes embarrassed, saying that the girl was still very young, but the protagonist only says that she was irritated from hearing only that, and she also did not want that future for herself. Later, looking out the window, she thinks of someone she loves, and looking at the ceiling, she notices something. Suddenly, Desi falls right onto the balcony. Closing the door, he says that he warned her to keep the window closed since it was very cold outside. Suddenly, the girl rushes forward, hugging him all of a sudden, saying that she had been waiting for him. Startled, Desi asks if something had happened, but she quickly denies it, asking where he had been this time. The young man only explains that he had been hunting a little, and holding a strand on his clothes, she finds it strange. It was long, a long red strand. Desi gets nervous, but turns around and simply asks what that was. And a little awkwardly, he says that it was nothing the girl needed to worry about right now. He tries to explain, but when he looks at her, Selenia is already in tears. And when she tries to call his name, she only backs away, saying that he should stay away from her, wondering why he could not even say anything at all. He only kept lying, pushing her away. Desi claimed that he wanted to stay by her side, but he was not doing that. Holding her with one arm, he says that he he would only need a second and he would tell her everything. He apologizes and says that he would tell her everything, so the girl should calm down a little. And then he holds her in his arms but finally asks her not to cry. Later that night, he begins to explain, saying that he worked in a human village. She is surprised, asking if everything is alright. Desi says that he ended up getting very good at it, and when it is urgent, he pins down his ears and ends up messing up his hair a little to cover them, saying that it looked quite convincing. When he could not do that for very long, he normally wore a hat. He says that at first he worked as a delivery boy for a large shop, but he did not earn real money, only doing odd jobs, so he ended up working as a carpenter too. But if he stayed away for too long, he imagined that someone would be stuck waiting and unable to sleep. Celiana points out that apparently that someone Desi was worried about was her, and he indirectly agrees. He asks if the girl remembers the hunter who came to the estate a few years earlier, pointing out that he did the same kind of work. If he hunted a troublesome target and delivered its body, he ended up receiving quite a lot for it, so he really was going out to hunt. The protagonist is surprised to hear that, and he points out that the hair belonged to the shop owner he had just negotiated with, but he did not know how it had ended up there, also saying that that person was married and had children, while blowing the hair away. Celiana then thinks that the clothes Desi had been wearing recently really were bought with the money he earned. She had only thought that the boy had stolen them from somewhere, but the protagonist then asks why he would need so much money, and he simply says that he does not understand why she was saying that. After all, if she wanted to go to the academy, both of them would need money. That surprises her, and Desi just keeps talking, saying that he heard it cost a ton to live in the capital, so he only thought that he should start saving as much as possible first. The protagonist had said some time ago that she wanted to go to the academy. She asks why he did not try to convince her to give up. Desi points out that her excuse was that she could not take him with her, and her argument was that there would be nowhere for him to hide in the dormitories. However, if he went to the capital too and lived with her, everything would be fine. Her head spins a little. After all, she had already given up that dream of going to the academy, but Desi had kept thinking about it all this time. He was dreaming about her abandoned dream for her. Then Desi says that anyway, since she said she wanted to go, he would not let her give up, but he is interrupted when the young woman places her hand on his face, quickly pulling him into a kiss. A little earlier, while still talking with her sister, the woman asks if she had ever kissed anyone before. A little confused about that, Celiana answers that she had not. Sighing a little knowingly, Solivia says that she had already suspected that. The protagonist defends herself, saying that they told her that this is very embarrassing. Her sister shoots back, asking why knights and princesses kissed in fairy tales. Thoughtful, she thinks that was a good argument, asking if it was because they loved each other. Her sister agrees and says that there was no reason to be ashamed of loving someone, that in fact, it would be strange if you were ashamed of that. That happens because love grows so much that it can no longer be hidden. Someday, all of a sudden, you feel grateful, sad, or even tenderness, and you simply cannot control how much you like the person. So you have to pour that feeling into him and press your lips to his. The protagonist thought about how to place her feelings onto another person's lips. Desi is initially shy, surprised. All of that was nothing, but the kiss unfolds. Finally, they pull away a little, and she looks at his face. Then when she is close to calling his name, he returns, kissing her back. This time a little bolder, kissing her with his tongue. But suddenly, the kiss becomes a little dangerous. She notices that his fangs are hurting a little. They continue a little longer, but she stops him for a moment to breathe. Desi cannot hold back and gives in, throwing himself on top of her. He continues. The girl tries to call for him, but the young man does not seem to hear. But as soon as he is right on top of her, he startles, realizing the situation. He gets up in a hurry and frightened. Celiana asks what was wrong. He says it is nothing, but says that she is still young, wondering what he was doing. She does not understand, and Desi explains that if this continued like that, he might end up hurting her, and that for tonight, he would sleep outside, so she should not stay awake and should just go to sleep. He simply leaves, leaving her startled and confused. While she calls for him, she sees him jumping off the balcony, leaving her alone in the room without reacting, strangely irritated, thinking that he is nothing but a big idiot. Later that night, already lying in her bed, she feels his hand on her stomach, waking her from sleep. She turns around, and while she is about to ask what he is doing, Desi kisses her again. He asks near her face if she had been disappointed by what happened earlier. Celiana says yes, pointing out that she would like him to touch her more gently. She wanted to feel more. Desi asks if it was yes, guiding his hand to her breast, asking if her sister had told her about that. He starts playing with her and asks what he should do next. Timidly, she answers that he should go a little lower. His hand then slips over her body, going down to her abdomen and a little lower, the feeling taking hold of her, his hand going deeper and deeper. Turning to her, Desi asks if her sister had told her about this. Since that was not the case, then how was she supposed to know about this? Moving closer, he kisses her forehead and says that he would see her soon. Suddenly, the girl wakes up. That was only another dream, a little more complicated than usual. She then punches the pillow repeatedly, cursing. Nervousness taking over her and embarrassment rising to her face. Another snowy day outside, a carriage was approaching the estate. Still that afternoon, someone commented to the head steward, warning that they would clean there for the last time. The Count points out that his family's reputation was at stake, so he could not let anyone look down on them. Seliana was in a dress behind him, thinking that all of this was extremely suffocating and embarrassing, and that it was even freezing outside. Even those expensive clothes that were fashionable in the capital now were a little uncomfortable. Her father had spent the last few days polishing the entire estate, saying that he wanted it to look like the imperial palace. But in those cold days, he had even taken the flowers out of the vases and replanted them in the garden. As if to contrast with that setting, the carriage ran right over them, arriving suddenly. The Count says that they had finally arrived, and as the door opens, the protagonist thinks that today was the day her sister's fiancé would ask for her hand in marriage. Two men stepped out of the carriage. One older man, obviously overweight, and probably his son behind him. The Count says it is a pleasure to finally meet him, the so-called Count Osre. He returns the handshake. The Count was about to say that the journey they made had been along a fine road, but he is interrupted by Mr. Osre, pointing out that he noticed the roads leading to this village were somewhat poorly maintained. Already feeling slightly irritated, his jaw trembling, the Count says he is grateful that he faced such an uncomfortable road to get there. Then the man notices the women behind him, thinking that there were some beauties there after all. The young man approaches, saying that the girl must be his Selivia, but he ends up referring to Selenia, who becomes confused. The man then introduces himself as Brad Osre, the one who would be her fiancé. But when he is about to kiss her hand, the girl freezes, and while the young woman quickly pulls back her arm, her mother explains that she is only the second daughter named Selenia. The man looks confused as he glances to the side, and the girl thanks God that she is wearing gloves there, obviously feeling repulsed by that gesture. The man then asks where his fiancé is, and they tell him that she is only getting ready. Count Osre then seems a little astonished, asking if she is not ready yet. After all, he heard that she graduated from the academy, so he assumed she would be wise enough to be useful in management. However, he did not expect her to be so lazy. Her father tried to defend her, saying that the woman was not lazy. In fact, she was very wise and good with numbers, and even useful in administration actually, obviously lying about something he did not even minimally know. Her mother then says that she is only getting ready to look beautiful to receive them, so he should not be upset, pointing out that her Selivia was humble and understood her place. The man then says that she really would have to be a good woman if she wanted to support his son properly, saying that this was his final reason for coming there anyway. Selenia's father then points out the way, saying that before dinner he would properly show the estate. The protagonist thinks that this count was responsible for lands near the capital. He built considerable wealth, supplying the capital with various agricultural products and even seafood and goods such as wines. Apparently, he even had ties to the royal family. While her father led him along, the girl thinks that her father only wanted to take advantage, valuing the Osre family's geographic advantage and wide network of connections. While the two talked about business, the protagonist thinks that it seems he only dreamed of entering the capital's high society. However, her sister was not even here, so she wondered why she was there. Suddenly, the man approaches, asking if she looked like her sister. She asks for forgiveness, but says she believes so. After all, they were sisters. The young man then says that his fiancée must also be very beautiful, the protagonist pointing out that her sister was more beautiful than she was, and quickly becoming uncomfortable with the look she was receiving from that young man, even feeling disgusted. Suddenly, someone calls for Miss Selivia, a maid complaining that she could not go out dressed like that, but apparently the young woman forced her way through. The girl says that this was the best outfit she had, coming out dressed like a common peasant. Her father becomes extremely irritated, shouting her name, and she says yes, her name was Selivia, and asks if these were the guests who had just arrived. The young man introduces himself as Brad Osre again, but she quickly lets go of his hand and only gives him a high five. He says that it is quite a bold outfit, saying that he heard the girl was wise, but thinks he was misinformed. She says that actually he heard correctly. Her father had told her to wear her best outfit, so she simply did what they asked, a fact that leaves both counts quite disconcerted. A little nervous, the count's son explains that some men liked bold women, but that was not his case, claiming that he preferred a modest and timid girl, a fresh and innocent girl who did not know much about men. Smiling at him, the girl calls him rude, saying that this worked perfectly for her then, because she wanted nothing to do with him anyway, claiming that she already had a lover in the capital and wanted to marry him. Besides enraging the young man, that statement drives her father furious. All his plans simply went down the drain. He asks whether the girl at least understood what she had just done, her mother watching everything in fright while her daughter slowly walked away from everyone. Count Osre sighed, wondering what she meant, but lets a small smile slip. He claims that women with some education tended to be like that. They ended up thinking they were special and becoming reckless. Smiling and a little embarrassed, the Count says that she was not normally like that. Osre continues, saying that this was exactly why he had been worried on the way there. He had his doubts that someone who had recently graduated from the academy could really be obedient. His son agrees, saying that was exactly what he was thinking. But he says that he came anyway, out of consideration for the Alvard family name, and despite all this, it was not as if he had only one daughter. And to Celiana's complete misfortune, when her mind finally connected everything, she was shocked, looking with a desolate expression. And when her father finally agrees, with a macabre smile on his face, he comments that he had wished for that. After all, Selena was as gentle and proper as anyone could be, so they would not regret the choice. The young woman wondered what that was. While the girl did not even understand what was happening, her mother interrupts, saying that Selivia was right there, so there was no reason to choose Selena instead of her. But the Count simply rebukes her, shouting and pointing out that the men were talking, so she should not interrupt. The young man approaches, saying that she should not worry, and that if she married him, she would enjoy banquets and a life of abundance, and that it was a great privilege to become a member of the Osre family. Hearing all that, the protagonist's mind simply collapsed, realizing that she might be chosen instead of her sister so suddenly. But then she realizes that the Count is staring far too closely, stating that it seems the young woman had a lot on her mind. Her father then says absolutely not, saying that it must only weigh on her mind to think she was taking something from her sister. After all, she was still very young. The young man then explains that apparently a kind woman was destined to suffer, but points out that he would love her, and like a flower, adore her deeply. So her mother could rest easy, but the woman only lowers her gaze. Her father then says that she should try her best too, but anxiety was taking over her. The girl was wondering what was going to happen to her. While they kept talking about banquets and the joining of their houses, her mind simply sinking into disgrace with the clinking of the glasses. And before she realized it, she was sitting at the table beside everyone. They talked, they feasted, her brother always indifferent, but there she was, silent again, trapped inside her own world, desperate and not knowing what to do next. Pulling at her mother's dress, she explains that she would like to go upstairs now, but the woman only keeps a smile on her face, and when she calls her again, she simply ignores her. Celiana thinks that this is obvious. Her mother never paid attention anyway, so she says out loud that she is sorry, but she would like to excuse herself early. Then, heading toward the hall door, someone asks whether the young lady was feeling ill or something like that. But they say she should not worry and that she had always eaten like a bird, thinking that nervousness must have only made the situation a little worse. Someone says it even looked kind of cute, but Ellie comes to comfort her. The protagonist says she can manage from there and dismisses her, saying she can change into her own clothes, ending up alone in her room again. Then she quickly runs toward the wardrobe and starts throwing everything inside a chest. The doll she had since childhood falls to the floor, the doll her sister gave her, so this was where it was. For a moment, just for a moment, she felt resentment toward her sister. If only her sister had accepted this engagement, she would never have had to go through this. And even if it was inevitable, it did not have to be today. She feels a hand coming close to her face, as if it were her sister embracing her again when she was younger. But that does not really happen. But she thinks that it was not her sister's fault. This never should have happened to her either. If she had someone she loved, like Selivia does, if she had found love, she would be brave too. But suddenly someone calls for her. Desi appears, asking what is wrong and what just happened. When she looks at him, her vision brightens. He asks what happened, since her hands were simply freezing. And in his arms, while Desi says he is going to look for something to cover her, Celiana then realizes that she actually has someone she loves too. Someone who is curious about her. Someone who cares about her. While Desi carries her to the bed, he keeps asking what the hell happened. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Just continue already. But unfortunately, because of YouTube's generous and always perfectly timed guidelines, we're going to have to stop the recap right here. The rest is up to your imagination. I have faith that your imaginations will more than make up for what I can't narrate. The title of the work is The Beast of Alvard Manor, and I recapped up to chapter 17. For now, the story is still in its early chapters. The following chapters are scenes we can't describe. Business hours do not allow it. So as soon as there is more developed story, more romance, more tension, more family drama, and probably more of Desi doing things I cannot describe in detail, I'll come back here with the continuation for you. Tell me in the comments what you thought. Do Saley and Desi have a future? Is her father going to completely lose it? And her sister Solivia, will she manage to run away with the man she loves? Leave everything in the comments, drop a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you still haven't. Kisses, and see you next time!